You're listening to Meredith Howell's story, a daughter with a rare genetic condition, on the Child Life On Call podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Child Life On Call podcast. When your child is sick, the whole world seems to stop in its tracks. Plans and priorities change, and your number one job becomes figuring out how to get your child well again. For some of us, rest, medications, and relaxation can do the trick. But for others, it takes more. It takes countless doctor appointments, invasive medical testing, therapy, surgeries, the list goes on, and then you still may not have all of the answers or results you were hoping for. This podcast features parents of children that have an illness or medical condition and gives them a place to share their own journeys and experiences. We will talk about the ups and the downs, the highs and the lows, but one thing seems to remain the same. Children are resilient and teach us more about ourselves and the world than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for lending a listening ear and opening up your heart to these families and this podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor.
It is so overwhelming that you don't know if you can take a breath because it just the worry and the unknowns can just, debilitate you. But then, that it starts to fade over time, that worry and that constant wondering about the future and being scared and grieving and being angry that it happened to my kid.
Hello, Child Life On Call listeners. I am so excited and honored to present to you the amazing woman that is Meredith Howell. She and I connected over Instagram, and I was so excited to talk with her and record our conversation for you to hear. Meredith, mom to 8-year-old Lola, and I talk about her incredible daughter who has Bosch-Boonstra-Schaaf optic atrophy syndrome, also referred to as BBSOAS. You will hear in our conversation that I struggle to repeat the name of this rare condition many times, but Meredith points out the importance of saying the entire name as it truly represents her daughter's condition. I want you to listen to this entire episode because Meredith has so much insight to share, so we begin with a brief introduction into her life.
My name is Meredith Howell, and I am married to a gentleman named Rob. We have been together for about 11 and a half years. It'll be 12 years in August. And we have 2 kids. We have Lola, who is just turned 8 in January. And we have a son named Sebastian, who turned 5 in January. And we live in Indianapolis. We have 2 dogs, and we have a cat, and we have a wonderful little neighborhood that we live in and a community that we're a part of. And I am the regional director for a nonprofit called Visually Impaired Preschool Services, and we provide early intervention to babies and toddlers who are blind or visually impaired throughout the state of Indiana. And we're happy in our community here.
I love that. I didn't know that about your work experience. That's pretty incredible. Do you mind kind of just walking us through about who we're going to be talking about today and your experience with her?
Sure. So we are talking about my daughter, Lola. She is, as I mentioned, 8 years old, and she has an extremely rare genetic condition called Bosch-Boonstra-Schaaf optic atrophy syndrome. That is a result of an NR2F1 gene mutation. They can also have a deletion to have that syndrome. My daughter has the mutation, and it is something that impacts her life profoundly, but it is also something that makes Lola, exactly who she is, and continues to teach us about patience and acceptance and unconditional love and, all of these things that you will have anyways as a parent of any child, but especially more so, I feel as if with Lola, there are things that she has brought out in me that weren't necessarily identified before. So she's 8 and she's had the diagnosis since December of 2014.
Okay, gotcha. So let me do the math there. How old was she when she got the diagnosis?
She was she was 1 month away from turning 4.
Do you have a nickname for the condition, what you guys refer to it as?
BBSOAS.
Okay.
Yeah. I often will joke with the researchers because we are in direct contact with them since it is extremely rare. And I always joke, why couldn't just one of you put your name on it? Because it is certainly a mouthful, but I'm also very grateful that they all identified it. So I'm willing to, have that mouthful for the rest of my life if it means that, it connected me to the community of other families who have children with the same diagnosis. So, but it is, we go by BBSOAS.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it is a mouthful, but it's true. It's very indicative of exactly what her condition is and what she's living with. So it is a mouthful and it's worth it.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Would you tell us about the time leading up to finding out about BBSOAS? Did I do it?
BBSOAS.
BBSOAS. Got it.
Correct. Yes. So it actually started back in, my husband and I were living in Costa Rica. My mom and my stepdad owned a bed and breakfast down there. And so we thought, well, we'll just go on a little adventure. And so we were working and living in Costa Rica right next door to my parents. And I, we were wanting to start a family and I became pregnant. And, started kind of blogging about our experience of, being pregnant in a foreign country and the medical, healthcare system and what that was going to look like. And then, I had, my daughter on January 4th, 2011. And, she, from the moment she was born, they placed her on my chest and I had always been told about that immediate moment of mother and child looking at one another and establishing that bond of I am yours, you are mine, my voice is who you've been hearing for the last 9 months. And when they placed her on my chest, she didn't make any eye contact at all. And I thought, well, I've read that, all babies are born legally blind and that perhaps it was something that was going to develop over time. And I was exhausted. I had just, birthed the baby. And so, I just thought that it was something that would come along later. And so she, at about, she still didn't really make much eye contact with us. And I kept asking the pediatrician in Costa Rica, is this normal? And they said sometimes it just takes longer to develop. So she could have had something called delayed visual maturation. And so at about 4 months of age, she started having these extremely weird kind of repetitive arm movements. And they would come in clusters, and I didn't quite understand what they were. People around me kept saying, oh, it's probably just the mortal reflex she's having, or maybe it's gas, or all of these things. But the fact that they kept coming in clusters is what was really starting to concern me. And it always happened as she was sleeping or when she was sleeping. So I just one night just started Googling, Moro reflex repeatedly and ended up finding a YouTube video of a baby doing the exact same thing that Lola was doing. And so it ended up that, she had something called West syndrome or infantile spasms. We immediately took video and contacted a neurologist, and she was, for being in what people would often think of as a third world country, it was not at all. We were, she was admitted to the hospital and had an EEG, which was to determine if she was indeed having this rare and catastrophic form of epilepsy. is what the internet told me. So I was obviously, devastated, but just really focused on making sure that we were taking all the steps to get her the treatment that she needed. Thankfully, we were in Costa Rica, and we had a neurologist actually believe us. I've read horror stories about families going to the emergency room and, thinking that this is what it is, that these infantile spasms, and them getting turned away and saying, no, it's just gas, or it's this or that. And so I was really grateful that we had someone listen to us. She was put on steroids for a month. She was essentially in a quarantine where only a certain few of us could be around her at home. And over time, about 3 weeks, the seizures stopped, and then she was put on a maintenance medication for seizures. And that was kind of the beginning of all of it. So she started with the infantile spasms, and then at 7 months of age, she was diagnosed with something called cortical visual impairment, which means that her eyes take in the images, but her brain can't process them. So that it makes her essentially legally blind. They often say it's like looking through a kaleidoscope or Swiss cheese. Nobody can really tell us what she sees, but it's one of the few visual impairments that can get better with early intervention. So because the brain is plastic and it can learn to see essentially. And so we started her in early intervention in Costa Rica, and, had all of these amazing therapists who are helping us. And then it was very strange. She had an MRI in Costa Rica, and they had diagnosed her with something called lissencephaly, which is essentially where the brain is partially smooth, and it can have, pretty catastrophic symptoms that are associated with it. And so we wrapped our head around that this is what she was going to have, and perhaps, accepted that we might lose her early on because their life expectancy was shorter, which was really hard to accept. But at the same time, we were going to love her just the same. And so after she was almost a year old, and we just decided that for long-term purposes, it would be best to move back to Indianapolis. And so we had a home here that we had been renting out. And so we came back to Indianapolis in December of 2011. And we went to a neurologist here at Riley Children's Hospital. And the neurologist immediately said she doesn't look like a child that would have lissencephaly because of some of the gross motor skills that she had, like sitting up and things that typically take longer for those children. And so they repeated the MRI, and a few weeks later, we received the news that she did not have lissencephaly, which was pretty fascinating and interesting and scary, because if it wasn't lissencephaly, then what was it that she had? And so it just turned out that the MRI technology in Costa Rica was not quite as effective, or, I don't know the word. It wasn't as good as what it is here in Indianapolis, apparently. And so then if it wasn't lissencephaly, what was it? Was it something worse? Was it something better? What was going on with our little girl? And so we went through a couple rounds of genetic testing, and that came back normal. And you would think that getting genetic testing coming back normal would be a good thing, but when you're on a hunt for answers for your child, you really want to know what is it that's causing her to have all of these challenges in life. Was it something I did? Was it because I was a vegetarian and I didn't eat meat when I was pregnant? Was it because I was in Costa Rica and was subjected to drinking different water, or, all of these things in my mind of what did I do to cause my little girl to have all of these problems? And so, we finally, got a phone, did this whole exome sequencing, which looks at all of her DNA. And there were enough markers that they were, looking for certain types of things. And they ended up that she had a gene mutation called NR2F1. And it was one of those moments of great relief because yes, we had the diagnosis and we know what it is. And, we were, we just felt positive that this was we were searching for an answer and we found it. But then I went to Google and I typed in NR2F1 mutation and quickly realized that there was no information. There were a couple of, I think maybe at that time there had been one or two studies that had been released. And so it was actually kind of scary because it was like, wow, this is really rare. This is something that they don't know a lot about. And what does this mean for our daughter? And does this mean her lifespan is going to be shortened or that she's going to regress or, if there wasn't enough information out there. And so when we went in for our genetic counseling session for them to explain to us what NR2F1 was, they essentially gave me the same paperwork that I had printed off the internet myself. And so, it was, that was before they had even named it BBSOAS. And so we were kind of, at the forefront of this journey now, this journey of being an ultra rare, genetic condition and have, kind of accepted that she's setting the path for what that means for her. And, much like something like Down syndrome or, any other syndrome that's out there, I anticipate that this is just the beginning and that, there will be, they think there will be hundreds and hundreds more cases that will be identified because of modern medicine, like the whole exome sequencing.
Wow, that's pretty incredible and such an emotional roller coaster that you went on from one diagnosis to another, not having this one, getting a new one, finding answers, but then actually not having any research done about it. So how did Lola handle kind of all those doctor's visits at the beginning there? And I mean, on top of all of this roller coasters of emotions you're going through, you're also helping to raise a child who isn't able to see, and that probably comes with its own challenges.
Yeah, so Lola is a trooper. I mean, for all of the poking and prodding and EEGs and blood draws and all of the things that she has had to go through, she has really, as long as someone is near her that brings her comfort, she is okay with. She's always been okay with the things that she's had to do. Now, she doesn't necessarily like the 5-day video EEGs, which none of us do because those are miserable.
Those are terrible.
But other than that, so, the thing about Lola, she has intellectual disability. She doesn't fully understand, everything that goes on. And so, just always explaining to her what she's about to go through, even knowing that she might not fully comprehend it, but just giving her that warning that, okay, this is what you're going to be going through now, or, just reassuring her that mommy or daddy or someone's going to be with her through all of it. But I guess if there's a silver lining of Lola being born this way is that she doesn't know any different. And so, while my son Sebastian goes in and gets a shot, well, he knows what that is. He knows that, that's not something he's often having to be subjected to, or whereas Lola, she grew up, we're among the lucky where we don't spend a lot of time in hospitals, but she does have, lots of therapies and doctor's visits and medications and tests and things like that. But, she, that's just part of her life. And so I don't know that I think as she gets older, she's starting to understand more, but, I guess if there's any, positive part about it is that this is just the way that she's always grown up. And it's the way that, I used to feel pretty sad about what, my interpretation of how she saw the world. And then I thought, no, that's because I know what the world looks like through my own eyes. And I'm putting that onto my daughter, who doesn't know her world looks any different from the rest of, most everyone else. And so, and when I say legally blind, because it's a visual processing disorder, she can still see. When she was a baby, she couldn't see much of anything at all. You could have the largest toy, brightly colored noises, sound, lights flashing, and she wouldn't look at it at all. But now, because the brain is just this miraculous, amazing thing, through the power of early intervention, by challenging her brain to, essentially adapt to the deficit that's in her, that visual pathway, she learned to see. And so, she will always be legally blind. She will likely never be able to drive a car, or, there are things that she still struggles with greatly as far as her vision goes, but she also can, be walking around and get a glimpse of a yellow M&M on the floor or something, and pick it up and know it's a yellow M&M and eat it. So not that I want her eating anything off of the floor, but when you're a mom of a little girl who has struggled with her vision so much, you're like, yay, look, she saw that.
Absolutely.
So, but she, that I've learned it was actually not very early on. I have learned that I can't put what I've gone through in my life on Lola, because she doesn't have the same emotions that I do, she doesn't see the world the same way I do, but she doesn't know any different. And so, rather than feeling that pity, like she's missing something in life, I just look at it as, wow, she sees the world in a completely different way, and how cool and amazing for her that she, it saddens me to not know what that looks like, but how cool and amazing that, that's just the way that it is for her. I blogged for a long time about our life of, navigating the medical care, the healthcare system in Costa Rica with a child with special needs. And then, kind of going through that journey of infantile spasms, because everything you read on the internet was just so grave. I mean, it was so sad and devastating that, it took everything in me to continue to research, because I needed answers. We were in Costa Rica, but at the same time, everything I read was just so devastating. And so I started blogging, and I realized that it became kind of a journal or an outlet for myself, and what processing the emotions I was having as I was going through the journey. But also, kind of giving people that hope that, there are challenges, there are ups and downs, and there will be days when it is so overwhelming that you don't know if you can take a breath, because it, just the worry and, the unknowns can just, debilitate you. But then, that it starts to fade over time, that worry and that constant wondering about the future, and being scared, and grieving, and being angry that it happened to my kid. And so that blogging about it and kind of sharing that journey helped me immensely. And also, I think, helped other people realize that, life really does go on. It's not that there aren't challenging days and challenging moments. And I'm thrilled to be sitting here drinking coffee away from the chaos of having two kids on a Sunday,
Yes.
Morning. But at the same time, with that, it just becomes your version of, I hate that word normal, but your version of what normal looks like. And you just begin to accept it. And, she has brought so much hope to the families that are just getting the diagnosis of BBSOAS. People have followed her journey from all around the world. We've met some great friends, and, given them hope about that infantile spasms can get better, that CVI, cortical visual impairment can improve. And so I think that having that outlet, finding a way to get yourself through the stages of the grief, because not that I don't love Lola for exactly who she is, but it was, she was born with a lifetime of challenges, and no parent wants their kid to have a lifetime of challenges, and ones that are so profound that you don't know if she's out on the sidewalk. I mean, she can't be out there by herself because she might run in the road, or someone might pick her up, or, she doesn't understand those safety boundaries. And so, it's really, kind of scary to go through life like that, knowing that you have a child who will always be faced with challenges like this. But then again, she, I think, has been kind of a beacon of light and inspiration and hope. And, I love her for who she is. I wish she didn't have the things that she has to go through. People often, ask if I, wish that I could take the diagnosis away. And it's not that I would take it away, but I would certainly, that I would do everything I could to make life easier for her. And I think that that's natural with most any parent, whether you have a child with cancer, or you have a child with diabetes, or you have a child with a mental illness. It wouldn't change the core of who Lola is, but if I can make life just a little bit easier for her, I absolutely would, because I have to go on with my life knowing that there's going to be a day when I won't be around anymore. And, that I have this person who is going to need help the rest of her life. And it's really hard, because I need to live forever because it makes it a really difficult, thing to accept. So
you talked a little bit about kind of your blogging and journaling, and I was just curious about how your husband or other family members or close friends kind of handle everything, and how their journey was.
My husband is the absolute most amazing person on the planet. He handled it in a way that I have great admiration for. He was much stronger going through it than I was. I was an emotional wreck. It was my baby. So it was really hard to see her go through all those things. But I think he was trying to be the strong one for both of us. And so he certainly was more quiet about it and just very methodical about these are the steps we need to take, and has always trusted me to, he knows that even though all the decisions we make for Lola, but I'm kind of, and I don't know if this is a mom thing of children with special needs. I know that dads are amazing as well, but I feel like there's a control piece that we moms can't seem to let go of. And so he trusts that I'm going to research the doctors, and I'm going to research the medications, and I'm going to make sure if we're going to try a new therapy, it's because I had been reading all about it. And he's a part of all of those conversations, but I think he's also accepted that, this is, something that I really can't let go of that control of, because it's so inundated in our life. And so he was, he's a very private person. So having a public blog, was not the easiest for him, but we were also in Costa Rica for much of that. And so it was a way for his family to stay connected to what tests she was going through, or what, how she was feeling, or how her seizures were, or, things like that. So I think that it, in that regard, it was okay. But then he would see some of my really vulnerable posts and kind of feel that's public knowledge now, but I was trying to show somebody else that, other people were going through it as well. And so then, like I think as having, my parents, my mom was always very accepting and always just right by my side and what did we need, and, always just very supportive. My stepdad, it took him a little bit longer to accept the reality of the diagnosis and the challenges. I think when they're babies, you can't really tell that, there's developmental delays, or they might not be crawling, or she might not have walked until she was 3. But as they get older, you start to really notice the difference between a neurotypical 8-year-old and an 8-year-old with perhaps Lola's condition. And so, I think as she's gotten older, it's become more apparent to Steve that, this is a lifelong thing that she will deal with. And she certainly has pretty significant challenges. But also I think through all of that, he is her biggest champion and vice versa. And so it's, I think it helped create this, not that they wouldn't have an unconditional bond anyways, but I think that he's more protective over her, and he, that child can, my poor son, who is this brilliant, just has this great warm energy, smile, can light up a room. He asks for an extra cookie and he usually gets a no, because he he's Sebastian. He can ask for it whenever he wants. Well, when Lola started to be able to talk and, if she asks for a cookie, she'll get 13 cookies. And so, it's really trying to balance that, that just because she has been delayed and she's catching up with certain things like talking and being able to say what it is that she wants, that we don't, not so much me, because I think I've learned to, understand that you give her the world and she's going to rule the world. But, for my parents, I think that they've started to, or that they are recognizing that, giving into Lola because she's Lola really is, it can almost be more of a disservice to her. So, because she will.
The great grandparent problem.
Yes. Yes.
How are you balancing your work life and your home life? And I guess if you could give any advice to other parents who are of a child with special needs, what have you find works to find your balance?
I think time has probably been the greatest gift for me, because in the beginning, you're so consumed with everything. It's on your mind all of the time. You feel guilty if you want to go for a walk, if you want to go get a moment of fresh air, if you want to just put your face in your computer for a minute, or, just go out and do something with a friend. You feel so guilty because you feel like you're taking away from the time that could be spent researching or helping, do interventions with Lola, or doing this or doing that. And so in the beginning, it's really hard because it's such a huge part of your life, and you're trying to adjust to, it's hard enough adjusting to becoming a parent, but it's really hard to adjust to becoming a parent of a child with special needs, because there are so many unexpected curveballs being thrown your way on a daily basis. And so over time, I think Lola started going to the Indiana School for the Blind and Visually Impaired when she was 3. She started going full time. So, for those 8 hours a day, she was at school, and I was home with my son Sebastian then, and then just realized that I enjoy being a working mom. And so I ended up getting a job at a nonprofit that had served my family, had provided early intervention to Lola and to our family, because of her vision loss, and was offered a part-time position. So I started up part-time and then gradually moved my way to full-time, and was assistant director, and then recently was promoted to regional director. And it is it has been an adjustment because I work more than, full time because I love what I do. And I also am passionate about helping other families who are in the same situation that I found myself in years ago. And so as far as like the work component, it's wonderful because I get to go out and advocate and raise money and share my story, and in return help other children and families who have kids that are blind or visually impaired. And so I couldn't think of a more fulfilling job in that aspect. But I think that, as far as like that balance, any working parent is balancing that. We just happen to have some extra, challenges here and there, like, the doctor's appointments, and she goes to full-time, applied behavior analysis therapy. She doesn't go to a school that is essentially her school for 8 hours a day. And so, adjusting to the drop-offs and the coordinating schedules and such. But, I think in this past, I would say probably the past 2 years have really started to focus on my well-being. When we went in and had Lola tested for autism, the psychologist said, "How are you doing?" And I just burst into tears. I mean, I cried for probably, a good 15 minutes because I don't think someone had asked me in that way. I mean, sure, people are like, "Hey, how are you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And I can always talk to like my husband or my parents about, what I'm going through. But, it was just it threw me off guard of how am I doing? And then it was like, oh, I'm not doing much of anything to take care of myself. She asked what I was doing in my free time, I wasn't doing anything that brought me joy, and not that my kids don't bring me joy, but bring something that's specific for myself to feed my soul. And so I, started, doing like working out, or I would, just find random things to do with friends or whatever. But I really started, this past July, I started going to hot yoga. And that's been, I guess I should back up. I tore my ACL playing rooftop hockey. That was really like kind of a fun outlet that I was having because it was like a team sport and it was something that I just really loved to do. Tore my ACL, ended up being on crutches and surgery and all of that not fun stuff for a year, and decided to take up yoga because, typical workouts was just way too harsh on my body. And so, never in a million years thought that yoga was going to be this transforming, practice. I had always read about it being, so great for people, but thought it was, I wasn't very mindful. My mind is all over the place. I'm a very anxious person. But it has been probably the greatest thing that I've begun to do for myself. And so I've been committed to that since July. I go, usually try to go about 3 times a week, to hot yoga. And that really not only helps with, me feeling physically strong, but it has helped me mentally in a pretty profound way as well, has boosted my confidence, has made me realize that I can't control everything. I'm exhausted trying to control everything. And so if I can just be mindful about, what I really do have, control over, and realize that if something goes, in a different way than I had anticipated, that it's not the end of the world. And so, but I think, I really think I probably had some post-traumatic stress disorder from the infantile spasms that Lola suffered as a baby. All of that just, I think had a pretty profound impact on feeling like, when's the next shoe going to drop? When's the next really bad thing going to happen? Is she, am I going to walk into her room and she is going to be dead from a seizure. These things that you never think are going to be even part of, your life. But when you're in a special needs community and you recognize that, hey, my friend lost her child because of a rare complication or from sudden unexpected death in epilepsy patients. Those are things that are real. And so just kind of always being on edge, waiting for the next bad thing to happen. Well, now I'm in a place that, because I will have no shame to admit that I take Prozac on a daily basis. I tried all of the natural methods, eating healthy and trying to be mindful and exercising and, doing this and doing that. And you know what? That just didn't cut it for me. And I'm happily medicated. I have my Xanax when I need it as well. I'm lucky I have a doctor who recognizes that my life is very complicated and I am on safety alert every moment of the day when I'm awake with Lola. And so, every time my phone rings is a therapist calling to say she's, possibly, fallen, or she's, hurt herself, or is she having a seizure? All of these things. Or when I'm here at home and she's getting ready to walk down the stairs, I'm rushing to walk down the stairs with her so she doesn't fall. I mean, it's just, I didn't realize the gravity of being constantly prepared for something to possibly bad happen. And so now, because being medicated and doing yoga and going out with friends a couple times a month and having dates with my husband, all of these things have really helped recharge Meredith as a woman, as an individual. And that, I think, in return makes me even better for Lola and for Sebastian.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with us. I've heard that from a lot of parents, that you can kind of try all the things and then it's finding a good doctor for yourself too, not just for your child. Somebody that you can talk to and relate to and can actually listen to you and help you through what you're going through.
Absolutely.
You mentioned before that you're kind of connecting with these other families who have a similar diagnosis or the same diagnosis. What do you tell a parent who just receives this information? What kind of support and advice do you give them?
Well, the really nice thing is that now when our little BBSOAS group started out with just a few moms and then grew from that into, we started a Facebook group and now we're starting a nonprofit called the NR2F1 Foundation. We're really trying to build a community so that next time someone gets that diagnosis, they have a place to go. They're not going to the internet like I did and finding just, research studies and all of these things that are spoken in medical terms, not human, emotional terms. And so, I'm glad that, for one, they have a place to go. They have, every time someone is introduced to our private parent only Facebook group, it's a welcome. We're so glad you're here. We're going to, essentially wrap our arms around you and support you and love you and know that you're not alone on this journey. And I think that being able to offer that to those families is, it brings me great joy. It makes me, feel good about that, even though we didn't have that in the beginning, I'm glad that we can offer that to somebody else. And, I guess what I often tell even families that like our nonprofit serves, as well, in the beginning, it's really hard. You want someone to look into the crystal ball and tell you that everything's going to be fine in the future. And, it's just so hard accepting the unknowns because, it's your baby. You love your baby, but it's not what you expected. There's no books out there to prepare you for, having a child with an ultra rare, genetic mutation or any kind of special need for that matter. And so, I just try to tell them that there will be a day when you'll wake up and, this won't be the first thing on your mind. It won't be, BBSOAS in our case, or epilepsy or autism or developmental delays. It won't be any of those things. For us now, I woke up this morning and thought, oh, it's Sunday. It's my day to get up with the kids. Lola said she wanted French toast last night for breakfast. And so I knew I was going to make her French toast this morning. Did I change the laundry over last night? No, I didn't, because I'm an exhausted parent. Things like that, life goes on, and it's hard. It's not the easiest thing to accept that your kid has special needs. But it's also something that your heart learns to accept, your mind learns to accept. You go on with life, and the joy that Lola brings to our lives and has made such an impact in our community, and now throughout the country, throughout the world, the people that follow her journey. It's just, she is my soulmate. She is my everything. I know now that, 8 years later, we didn't have to make eye contact that very first moment she was born to know that I'm hers and she's mine, because we are connected in that way. I'm sure she is curious as to where I am, because I never thought I would hear, I didn't know if she would ever talk. And now, while it's Lola's version of talking, I hear Mom 150 times a day, and it's the greatest thing I've ever heard. And so, I just try to tell people to accept that you could grieve, you can feel angry, you can have lots of different emotions. But, give yourself don't beat yourself up for feeling those things. It's very natural. You feel guilty because you feel grief over a child that you thought you were going to have. And again, it's not that you don't love the child you have. It's just not what you were expecting. And I think that goes, again, for any parent who has a child with any kind of medical condition. It just, life goes on, and it becomes this beautiful, messy, chaotic, it might look different to most, but it becomes just so natural and routine to you. People say on a daily basis, I don't know how you do it. Well, you know what? I wake up and I love my kid every day. So, if that's, what's hard about doing that? It's what any parent would do, for their child. And so, I just continue to try to give people hope, and also know that there will be days and it will hurt, and there will be days when you don't think about it at all. And it's okay. I always, on the days where it does hurt, or, I see Lola start to notice the challenges that she's having. I try to honor that I try to recognize that I have felt sadness or disappointment in perhaps what I'm doing to help her. Have I done enough? But then again, I just, move on. The next day I'll feel better, I'm sure. So.
Thank you so much, Meredith, for being so frank and so honest about having a child with special needs and the ups and downs that go along with it. As she stated in our conversation, Meredith blogged about their experiences in Costa Rica, and you can find those posts at sayolalola.com. You can also follow along with her on Instagram and Facebook at sayolalola. The foundation that Meredith mentioned that she and other parents are creating to fund research and build a community can be found at nr2f1.org. Please rate and review this podcast on iTunes so that it makes it easier for other parents and listeners to find us. And make sure you're following along at Child Life on Call on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks so much for listening, and we will have a new episode next week.